Alien Empire required Earth surrender. Humanity sent coordinates instead. The Orvillin Empire prepared Earth's surrender ceremony before Earth had agreed to surrender. That was the first detail I noticed. Not the warships beyond the moon, not the occupation administrators waiting aboard transport carriers, not even the black and gold imperial standard hanging behind Executor Goreth Meln, as though the conference chamber already belonged to him. It was the empty signature field glowing on the table. Someone had entered Earth's planetary designation. Someone had listed the transfer of authority, the disarmament schedule, the provisional taxation system, and the date on which the first imperial governor would assume control. Only the human signatures were missing. I was seated 3 places behind Executor Meln because no one expected me to matter. I was an astro-verification specialist. My job began after conquests, when defeated governments submitted navigational records, resource claims, protected orbital zones, survey archives, and territorial coordinates. I checked whether the numbers were genuine before imperial administrators acted on them. Usually, I arrived after the important people had finished. That day, Meln wanted technical personnel present because he expected Earth to bargain with territory. He misunderstood the humans immediately. Your government has until the expiration of this session, he told them. There will be no extension. Across the table sat 6 human representatives. No one wore military armor. The central human was a woman from their foreign ministry, whose name I barely registered because she spoke only once. Beside her sat an older naval officer. 2 civilian legal advisors occupied the far end. And nearest me, almost directly across the table, sat a thin human man with silver beginning at his temples. He wore no uniform. He had a small scar near his left eyebrow and spent most of the executor's speech cleaning his glasses with the edge of his sleeve. That irritated me. An Orvillin executor was explaining the extinction of Earth's sovereignty, and the man behaved as if the greatest threat in the room was dust. Meln completed the surrender demand. Earth would disarm. Earth would accept imperial oversight. Earth's defense network would be transferred intact. Earth's population would be entered into the imperial registry. Human military vessels would be surrendered or dismantled. Failure to comply would result in enforcement. The phrasing was old, efficient, tested. 31 civilizations had received versions of it. All had eventually signed something. Meln folded his hands. We require Earth's answer. The human diplomat looked toward the thin man. That surprised me. He put his glasses back on. All right, he said. Meln's expression shifted by the smallest amount. You accept? No. The room became still. The human man slid a data wafer across the table. Meln did not touch it. What is that? Our response. The Empire requested surrender. Yes. And this is your refusal. No. Meln stared at him. I remember thinking the human was either reckless or simply incapable of understanding ceremony. What is your name? Meln asked. Dr. Elias Fenwick. Military rank? None. Government office? None. That caused several imperial advisors to exchange looks. Meln's voice cooled. Then why are you speaking? Fenwick pointed toward the wafer. Because those are astronomical coordinates. For the first time, Meln looked at me. The wafer was passed down the table. I inserted it into my reader. There were no words. No diplomatic statement. No threat. No fleet deployments. No declaration of resistance. Only spatial coordinates paired with observation windows, lensing angles, spectral bands, and calibration references. I checked the header twice. They are valid astronomical coordinates, I said. Coordinates to what? Meln asked. I cannot tell from the list. Fenwick corrected me gently. Coordinates from which to look. That was the moment the conversation changed. Not dramatically. No one reached for a weapon. No warning alarm sounded. But I felt it. The surrender document was still glowing on the table. Yet suddenly, it seemed less important than the little wafer in my reader. Meln leaned forward. Explain. Fenwick folded his hands. No. The executor's eyes narrowed. You misunderstand your position. I understand it quite well. You were given an opportunity to surrender. and you were given coordinates. For what purpose? Verification. Of what? Fenwick's face remained calm. That depends on where you look. Meln turned to me. Specialist Ashen. Executor. Are these locations inside the Sol defense perimeter? No. Military sites. Nothing in the file indicates that. Resource deposits. Not in any conventional format. Colonies. No. Then determine what they are. I glanced at Fenwick. He had taken his glasses off again. This time he was not cleaning them. He was watching me. Use your own instruments, he said. Meln's jaw hardened. Fenwick added, please. That almost made it worse. The session ended without a human signature. The surrender document remained unfinished. I returned to the Imperial flagship, convinced that Earth's response was theater. Humans were young by Imperial standards. Their civilization had expanded rapidly, argued loudly, and developed a reputation for treating improvisation as a cultural virtue. Coordinates instead of surrender fit the pattern. A strange gesture, a way to buy time, possibly an attempt to frighten us with concealed weapons. I expected deception. What I did not expect was that the first coordinate pointed toward nothing. There was no station there, no planet, no asteroid facility, no defense platform. The location sat in interstellar space near the focal geometry of a massive natural gravitational lens produced by a distant collapsed star. That was interesting, not threatening. Interesting. My assistants ran the calculations. The coordinate paired the lens with a particular target system on the far side of the galaxy. I knew the system. Everyone educated inside the Empire knew it. Talvarin, one of the great examples of peaceful accession. The textbooks described Talvarin as proof of imperial mercy. Its leaders had surrendered after a short blockade. No planetary bombardment had followed. Civilian institutions were said to have survived. Imperial citizenship had been granted within a generation. Talvarin was quoted. Whenever a stubborn civilization claimed surrender meant cultural death. I went back through the human coordinate package. The requested observation band made no sense for modern Talvarin. Then I noticed the time reconstruction. I recalculated. My mouth went dry. The human coordinates were not designed to observe Talvarin as it existed now. They were designed to recover light that had left Talvarin during its surrender. Old light. Very old light. The gravitational lens had bent a portion of that radiation along a path longer than the direct route to us. The photons had traveled through space, while the Empire wrote histories about what had happened after they departed. I checked the math again. Then again. My junior analyst asked what I had found. I told her nothing yet. I took a case from beneath my workstation. Inside was my calibration disc. Smoked glass, black rim, hand-ground imperfections. Obsolete by military standards. Every Orvillean astro-verification specialist received one during training because machines could confirm numbers while the disc taught judgment. You learned to align stellar points through it, read distortion by eye, and recognize when an instrument was giving you a technically correct answer to the wrong question. My instructor had once told me that a verifier who trusted a screen more than the sky was only a clerk with expensive equipment. I mounted the disc. Then I ordered the flagship's long baseline telescope to follow the human geometry. The first signal took hours to separate from noise. It emerged as spectral fragments, then color, then motion. Not a clean image. Nothing like a recording, more like archaeology conducted with light. We combined multiple bands, reconstructed phase differences, corrected for lens distortion. Talvarin began to appear. Cloud, ocean, the curvature of the planet, orbital infrastructure. My assistant stopped talking. An imperial formation entered the reconstructed field. I recognized the ship architecture, even though it was centuries old. Then came the Talvarin defense platforms. They were dark, disarmed, just as the Imperial history said. The surrender had already occurred. I felt relief. For perhaps half a minute, then the first Imperial ship fired. The beam struck a dark defense platform. A second shot followed, then another. Orbital structures began breaking apart. My junior analyst whispered, Maybe the timestamp is wrong. I checked it. It was not. Talvarin had surrendered before those shots were fired. The reconstructed image shifted as the lens path changed. We watched transports descend toward population centers. We watched surface bursts appear where the Imperial histories recorded post-accession civil disturbances. We watched an orbital habitat try to move away. An Imperial cruiser cut it in half. No one in the observation room spoke. I reached for the calibration controls and verified them manually. The disk gave me the same answer as the computer. The light was old. The geometry was correct. The source was Talvarin, and whatever else could be argued about interpretation, those weapons had fired after the surrender. I reported to Executor Meln personally. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he asked only one question. Can the humans have fabricated the signal? Not in the form we received it. That was not my question. I hesitated. They could fabricate an image. Good. But they cannot easily fabricate a gravitational lens path that our own instruments independently acquired. His expression changed. How difficult. Extremely. Impossible. I looked down at the calibration disc in my hand. No. Meln relaxed slightly. That single word gave him somewhere to stand. Then it is fabrication. Executor. It is fabrication until demonstrated otherwise. He turned toward the communication officer. Tell Earth we will not negotiate through theatrical astronomy. I should have remained silent. Instead I said, they did not ask us to trust their astronomy. Meln looked back at me. I realized then that I had spoken too quickly. They gave us coordinates, I said. We used our telescope, our software, our calibration. The room cooled around me. Meln's voice became very quiet. And we found it ourselves. For several seconds he said nothing. Then he ordered the data classified. That order lasted 11 minutes. Because the humans had sent the same coordinates to everyone. The first independent confirmation came from a university that had no diplomatic relationship with Earth. The second came from a merchant observatory, then an old religious order on a moon whose inhabitants considered the mapping of ancient starlight a sacred duty, published its raw measurements on an open scientific network. The humans did not release a dramatic compilation. That would have been easier to attack. Instead, they released calibration packages, lens solutions, instrument tolerances, correction methods, observation windows. They taught everyone how to look. That was worse. Executor Meln ordered Imperial networks to label the phenomenon human-derived interpretive contamination. Fenwick responded publicly for the first time. He spoke from an ordinary observatory on Earth, standing beside equipment that looked disappointingly civilian. He did not accuse the Empire of anything. He simply said, check our math. I hated him for that. Not because it was arrogant. Because it was not. He sounded like a teacher assigning homework. The next coordinate became observable soon afterward. A world called Ithera. Another famous peaceful surrender. The Empire had taught generations of children that Itheran cooperation had saved billions of lives. The recovered light showed Imperial ships destroying agricultural satellites after disarmament. Then came evacuation transports redirected toward labor depots. Then cities going dark sector by sector. Meln called it incomplete context. The humans did not argue. They published the next coordinate. The third world. The fourth. Not every observation showed massacre. That almost made the sequence more damaging. Some showed orderly occupation. Some showed exactly what Imperial histories claimed. On one world, Imperial medical transports genuinely entered plague zones after surrender and saved civilian populations. Fenwick included that one too. I remember staring at it for a long time. A propaganda campaign would have removed it. A revenge campaign would have hidden it. A scientific archive kept it. That was when I began to understand him. He did not need every story to condemn us. He needed the stories to stop belonging exclusively to us. Meln summoned me after the fifth observation. You have become remarkably quiet, specialist. I am working. You are verifying enemy material. I am verifying astronomical observations. Do you understand the distinction is becoming politically meaningless? That does not change the photons. His expression hardened. Before this crisis, I would never have spoken that way to an executor. I noticed it only after the words had left me. Mel noticed too. Be careful. I lowered my eyes. Yes, executor. He moved a display toward me. Another human coordinate. Why this world? I read the designation. My stomach tightened. Zorith. My home. Not the world where I had been born. My family had lived on the Imperial core worlds for generations. But Zorith was where our lineage began. Children of Sorethi descent learned the accession story before we learned higher mathematics. Our ancestors, we were told, had lived under 6 competing governments that exhausted themselves through constant wars. The Empire arrived. The Sorethi assembly surrendered. Imperial rule ended the wars. My grandmother called accession the day our future became possible. There were songs about it, a ceremonial phrase engraved above the entrance to the provincial hall. We chose tomorrow. Meln watched my face. The humans selected it deliberately. Possibly, not possibly. I looked at the coordinate again. The observation window was approaching. They want to compromise you, then assign another verifier. No, that surprised me. Meln stepped closer. You will conduct the observation. Why? Because when it proves inconclusive, I need the results certified by someone whose loyalty cannot be questioned. I understood. If Sarth showed nothing, I became useful. If it showed something damaging, my ancestry became a weapon against my credibility. Either way, Meln controlled the interpretation. I accepted the assignment. I told myself it was because refusal would look like fear. That was not entirely true. I wanted to see. The observation began in silence. I mounted my smoke glass disc personally. I checked the lens angle manually. I rejected the first computational correction because the stellar reference points drifted against the old glass. We recalibrated. The signal strengthened. Sarth appeared. The planet looked younger. More cloud cover. Fewer orbital structures. The Sorethi assembly fleet occupied high orbit in a tight defensive pattern. Then the fleet powered down. Surrender. I felt a strange warmth in my chest. Maybe the story was true. Maybe the humans had chosen badly. Imperial ships approached. No firing. Transports crossed between formations. Still no firing. Hours of old light passed through the reconstruction. My assistants looked increasingly uncomfortable. They had expected atrocity. Nothing happened. Then the Sorethi ships began moving. Not aggressively. They were forming lines. One by one, they entered Imperial docking corridors. A junior analyst smiled. Integration. I almost smiled too. Then I magnified the nearest ship. Small shapes were moving across its outer hull. People. Sorethi crew members. They were leaving through emergency access points. Not docking. Falling. Some wore pressure suits. Some did not. The first ship entered the Imperial docking corridor. Its running lights vanished. A few minutes later, an Imperial tug pushed the empty hull away. The second Sorethi ship approached. More figures appeared at its airlocks. Then another, and another. My hands began shaking. Pause reconstruction. No one moved. Pause it. The image froze. A Sorethi officer hung above the planet, caught in a beam of ancient sunlight. His body was small in the reconstruction, too small for a face. But I knew the uniform. Every Sorethi ceremonial guard still wore a descendant of that design. I turned away. My grandmother had taught me the accession hymn. We chose tomorrow. The officers in that image had chosen vacuum. Why? The answer came from later fragments. Imperial boarding parties. Families separated. Crew groups dragged through different corridors. A transport manifest reconstructed indirectly through traffic patterns. The surrendered fleet had not been integrated. Its personnel had been classified. Officers, technicians, labor, dependent civilians. Some Sorethi captains had understood what surrender meant only after the first ships docked. The rest had opened their own airlocks rather than enter. There was no heroic final battle, no great rebellion, just people discovering too late what had been promised to them. I removed the calibration disc. My hand slipped. It struck the console. The glass did not break. Not yet. Meln entered the room before the full observation ended. He had been watching through a secure feed. Specialist Ashen. I could not look at him. The data is compromised, he said. My senior assistant turned toward him. Executor. The humans selected a lens reconstruction requiring excessive interpretive correction. That was false. Everyone in the room knew it. I said no. Meln stared at me. I finally looked up. The signal is unusually strong. His eyes narrowed. Your family history has made you vulnerable to manipulation. My family history did not align the telescope. Tura. He had never used my given name. That frightened me more than his anger. You have served the Empire with distinction, he said. Do not allow an enemy to turn grief into treason. I looked back at the frozen Sorethi officer. What happened to them? History happened. That is not an answer. It is the only answer civilizations ever receive. He ordered the observation sealed. By then I knew it would not matter. Fenwick had already given Sareth's coordinates to several neutral observatories. Mel knew too. That was why his attention shifted from interpretation to prevention. The pattern in the human coordinate list became obvious that night. Talvarin, Ithera, Zoreth, Vihal, Keshiar, Dorn Reach. They were not random imperial conquests. They were the examples every imperial diplomat used when demanding surrender. The safest ones, the showcase worlds, the stories told to prove that obedience preserved civilization. Humanity was not trying to prove that the Orvillin Empire had committed atrocities. Everyone already suspected empires committed atrocities. Humanity was attacking something more important, the credibility of the offer itself. I called Fenwick. I expected bureaucratic delay. He answered personally. His face appeared on my private display with an observatory behind him. You figured it out, he said. You selected the accession cases. Yes. Why? Because your executor asked Earth to surrender. That explains the timing, not the strategy. Fenwick studied me. I realized he looked tired. You conquer because worlds believe surrender might save them, he said. Sometimes it does. Yes. His immediate agreement angered me. You included examples where imperial intervention helped. Of course. Why? Because they happened. I looked at him in disbelief. You expect the galaxy to make decisions based on mixed evidence. I expect them to make decisions based on evidence they can inspect. You could have made the case stronger. That would make it ours. I said nothing. Fenwick continued. We don't need people to trust Earth. There it was. The thing I had slowly begun to understand. If they trust Earth, he said, then Meln only has to discredit Earth. If they can reproduce the observations themselves, he has a larger problem. You are destroying the Empire's history. No. His voice remained gentle. We're removing the Empire's exclusive right to describe it. I hated the precision of that sentence. I hated that I had no answer. Then Fenwick leaned closer to his camera. Specialist Ashen, there's one coordinate left in your package that matters more than the others. I know. Then you know the observation window is short. Yes. Your government knows too. I looked toward the sealed door behind me. What is at the final coordinate? Nothing. I nearly laughed. After everything, the word felt obscene. Fenwick corrected himself. Nothing built. What does it observe? His expression changed. Not triumph. Concern. The first imperial surrender. I stopped breathing for a moment. The founding conquest. The one before Orvillin expansion became an empire. The historical event from which every modern surrender protocol claimed legitimacy. Records from that era were incomplete. Some scholars argued the first conquered civilization had joined voluntarily. Others claimed there had been a war. The official imperial doctrine said the event established the promise that surrender would preserve civilian life. If the humans had found old light from that day, Fenwick said, Meln will try to stop us. He cannot stop light that already traveled. No. He glanced off-screen toward someone speaking nearby. But he can stop people from collecting it. The final observation coordinate lay far beyond Earth. No fortress waited there. No hidden fleet. No human weapon. Only a region of space where the gravitational geometry aligned for a brief interval, with ancient light bent around a dense stellar remnant. Human science vessels arrived first. Neutral observatories followed. University ships. Private research craft. One vessel belonged to a civilization that had once voted against Earth's admission to a regional trade league. Another belonged to an imperial subject world. That ship transmitted no political statement. It simply requested telescope alignment data. Meln declared the gathering an unlawful military assembly. No one left. I was aboard the Imperial command cruiser when the fleet arrived, not an invasion armada. Meln was too careful for that. A concentrated enforcement group, accompanied by electronic warfare vessels and inspection craft. The official mission was to prevent fabricated historical data from destabilizing Imperial civilian populations. I read the order 3 times. For most of my career, I had believed that language existed to clarify reality. Now I understood how often institutions used it to make reality stand somewhere else. Meln found me near the primary sensor pit. You will certify the observation invalid. I have not seen it yet. You will. I cannot certify data I have not examined. You can certify contaminated collection conditions. Are the conditions contaminated? They will be. I looked at him. He did not pretend I had misunderstood. Executor, this is larger than your conscience. My conscience is not the issue. Then what is? The sky. He stared at me. I almost smiled. Perhaps Fenwick had infected me with irritating answers. Meln did not find it amusing. Your authorization will be revoked after this operation. I assumed so. Your pension. I said nothing. Your laboratory access. Still nothing. Your family archive privileges. That hurt. He saw it. Do not confuse stubbornness with courage. I don't. Good. He leaned closer. Courage is acting while understanding cost. Then he walked away. For perhaps the first time since Soreth, I appreciated him. He was right about that. The confrontation began without weapons fire. Imperial electronic warfare ships flooded the observation corridor with interference. The neutral vessels adjusted. Humans shifted collection bands. Imperial craft transmitted navigation warnings. No one moved. Then Meln ordered physical exclusion. Small enforcement vessels entered the telescope formation and positioned themselves directly across critical observation lines. That could work. The ancient photons were arriving whether anyone liked it or not, but reconstructing them required multiple collectors separated by enormous baselines. Block enough collectors, force enough movement, ruin enough timing. The wavefront would pass. The opportunity might not repeat within any useful lifetime. Fenwick's vessel sat near the center of the array. It was ugly. I remember that clearly. After weeks of hearing humans discussed as dangerous, manipulative, unpredictable creatures, I expected their most important scientific craft to possess some visual dignity. It looked like someone had built a telescope around a cargo frame. Long spars, sensor pedals, external cooling structures, a broad primary aperture whose shape seemed almost accidental. Meln ordered it to withdraw. Fenwick answered, "No, nothing else." Meln opened a direct channel. "Dr. Fenwick, your vessel is interfering with an Imperial security operation." Fenwick looked exhausted. "Meln, your security operation is interfering with astronomy. You are deliberately destabilizing sovereign Imperial territory. I'm looking through a telescope. You know precisely what you are doing." Fenwick considered this. "Yes." The executor's face tightened. "Withdraw." "No." Meln closed the channel. The first enforcement craft pushed against the human observation envelope. Not firing, shoving, forcing scientific vessels to burn maneuvering fuel and abandon alignment. Several neutral ships retreated. Others held. The recovered signal strength dropped. I watched the reconstruction estimate fall. Fenwick's team adjusted baseline weights. More collectors took over. An Imperial jammer moved closer. Signal coherence fell again. Meln glanced at me. "Prepare certification. No valid result exists yet." "It will not exist." "Then you won't need me to lie." His hand struck the edge of my console. Not hard. Hard enough. Do you understand what happens if the founding surrender becomes disputed? Yes. Do you? His voice rose. Do you understand what happens on hundreds of worlds when local governments decide every imperial promise is fraudulent? Do you understand what happens when garrisons are surrounded by populations who suddenly believe there is no value in compliance? Do you understand the wars this creates? I did. That was the terrible part. He was not defending only pride. He was defending order. Possibly millions of lives. Possibly billions. But I had seen what that order required from truth. Then perhaps, I said, the Empire should not have built peace on a story it was afraid to check. Meln's face went still. He turned away. Removed Specialist Ashen from the sensor pit. 2 security officers approached. Then every alarm on the cruiser sounded. Not an attack. Collision warning. An enforcement ship had moved too aggressively across the human array. Fenwick's vessel tried to compensate. The Imperial craft clipped one of its external spars. Metal tore across open space. The human ship began rotating. The primary aperture folded sideways. Signal coherence collapsed. On the command display, the reconstructed image vanished. Meln stopped walking. No one in the pit spoke. The observation window had minutes remaining. Hold position, he ordered. The enforcement ship backed away. The human science vessel fired maneuvering thrusters. One sputtered. Another overcorrected. Fenwick's ship continued rotating. I heard his voice across the open scientific channel. Primary mount is gone. Secondary phase frame. Someone answered. Not stable. Can you lock manually? Not at this rotation. Another voice. We're losing the window. Fenwick said, I know. Meln looked toward me. He didn't smile. That made it worse. The Empire had won. Not through superior historical truth. Through geometry. I thought of my grandmother. We chose tomorrow. I thought of the Sorethi officers entering vacuum rather than docking. I thought of Meln asking whether I understood the wars that truth might start. Then I thought about the first thing my instructor had taught me with the smoke glass disc. A verifier who trusts a screen more than the sky is only a clerk with expensive equipment. I pulled the disc from its case. The security officer beside me said, Specialist. I moved to the auxiliary optical station. Meln saw me. What are you doing? Verifying. You are relieved. I know. I opened an external feed from the damaged human vessel. The Imperial system rejected it. I overrode the filter with my scientific authorization. My last useful privilege. Fenwick's sensor data filled my screen. Chaotic. Partial. The human aperture was no longer aligned well enough for automated reconstruction. But alignment was not binary. The signal still existed. Buried. Distorted. I placed the smoked disc over the auxiliary site. Ancient habit. Primitive. My hands were shaking so badly that the reference stars jumped. I steadied my wrist against the console. One stellar point. Then another. The human vessel rotated. I compensated. Someone grabbed my shoulder. The disc slipped. It struck the metal edge of the sight. A crack shot across the smoked glass. The security officer pulled me backward. I twisted free. Wait. The cracked disc now split the reference star into 2 faint images. For 1 second, I thought it was useless. Then I saw the distortion. Not random. The crack had given me a second reference edge. I aligned one star against the fracture. Then the next. The human telescope's rotation became measurable against the broken geometry. Fenwick. No answer. I opened the direct channel again. Fenwick. His face appeared. Blood ran from his forehead. What? Stop automated correction. He stared. Who is this? Tura Ashen. Recognition. Then understanding. You have alignment. Not yet kill the correction. That will make it worse. Your computer is correcting toward a geometry you no longer physically have. He looked off-screen. Do it, he told someone. The automated solution vanished. Raw signal flooded my display. Ugly. Beautiful. Real. I adjusted manually. Roll port by point 2. Fenwick relayed it. The vessel moved. Too far back half. Another adjustment. The reference stars crawled along the crack in my disk. Hold! The waveform strengthened. Around me, the sensor pit had stopped moving. Even the security officers were watching. Meln stood at the center. He understood what I was doing. He could have ordered me shot. He did not. Perhaps because somewhere inside him, beneath office and doctrine and fear, he was still capable of wanting to know. Secondary Collector 7, I said. Shift phase negative. Fenwick answered, 7 is dead. Then use 12. 12 is neutral. Ask them. A voice from another ship cut onto the channel. Collector 12 accepting phase request. Not human. A neutral observer. The array began, rebuilding itself around the damage. One collector, then another. Independent telescopes joined. The Imperial interference continued, but now everyone knew exactly what was being suppressed. That changed the mathematics politically, if not physically. Window closing, someone announced. I looked through the cracked disk. One final adjustment. Now, the human vessel locked what remained of its aperture. The neutral collectors synchronized. Ancient light arrived. Not metaphorically, not historically, physically. Photons that had left the first conquered world before the Orvillean Empire knew what it would become crossed our instruments. The reconstruction began. At first there was only color, then curvature. A planet, 2 fleets, 1 Orvillean, 1 not. The non-Orvillean ships powered down. Surrender. My heartbeat filled my ears. Imperial ships moved forward. Transports approached. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the first surrendered ship exploded. Not from internal sabotage. The weapon origin was visible. Orvillean. A second ship broke apart. Then an orbital city. Meln closed his eyes. The final surrender myth ended quietly. No dramatic declaration. Just old light appearing on screens. The first civilization had surrendered. The Empire had fired anyway. My console asked for verification status. A certification field opened automatically. Meln said Ashen. I looked at him. His face carried no anger now, only exhaustion. If you transmit that certification, there is no return. I believed him. I looked at the cracked disk, then at the ancient planet. I know. I entered. Source geometry, VRIFID. Independent calibration consistent. Observation valid. Then I transmitted the raw calibration stream to every scientific receiver in range. Not the finished image. The raw data. Let them build it themselves. Meln could arrest me. He could destroy the human telescope. He could silence this ship. But dozens of observatories had the calibration now. Hundreds would have it soon. The Empire had lost the only battle that mattered. Not because humanity had proven the past. Because humanity had made the past reproducible. The surrender order for Earth disappeared from the Imperial network the next day. No announcement accompanied its removal. No apology. No admission. The document simply ceased to exist as an active directive. Executor Meln recalled the enforcement group. The invasion fleet beyond Sol remained in position for another day. Then it turned away. Officially, Earth had not defeated the Orvillean Empire. Officially, no battle had occurred. Officially, the Empire was reassessing strategic conditions after a hostile information event. I read the statement from a holding room. My scientific authorization had been revoked before I left the command cruiser. My rank disappeared 2 hours later. My pension followed. My family archive access vanished by evening. Meln kept every promise. So did Fenwick. He had promised nothing. That, I learned, was often the human way of avoiding debts they had no right to incur. He visited me after my release. The Empire did not imprison me. That would have made me a symbol. Instead, they classified my conduct as professional misconduct under emergency authority and expelled me from Imperial Scientific Service. Efficient, quiet, almost merciful, Fenwick found me at a civilian transit station, carrying everything I still owned in 2 cases. He had a bandage above his eyebrow. Your telescope, I asked. Gone. I'm sorry. So am I. I expected you to say it was worth it. It was. He shifted one of my cases away from the edge of the platform. Still like the telescope. I laughed. It surprised both of us. For several moments, we watched passengers move through the station. Then I asked the question I had been carrying. What happens now? To you? To the Empire? Fenwick looked toward the departure board. I don't know. You planned all this and you don't know. We planned to stop Earth from being conquered. You destabilized hundreds of Imperial worlds. No. I looked at him sharply. He met my stare. The Empire did whatever happened in those observations. We showed people where to look. That distinction will comfort no one during a rebellion. No. There was no triumph in his voice. I appreciated that. Do you regret it? I asked. Fenwick took a long time before answering. I regret that truth doesn't arrive with instructions for what people should do next. That sounded more human than anything else he had said. The first uprisings began within days. Not everywhere. Some Imperial worlds remained loyal. Some populations looked at the recovered histories and decided ancient crimes changed nothing about their current lives. Others demanded local inquiries. Imperial governors attempted censorship. Scientists copied coordinate catalogs faster than governments could remove them. On Sareth, the provincial hall took down the inscription above its entrance. Not destroyed. Removed. Placed in storage. My grandmother sent me a message. Only 4 words. I still love you. I cried harder at that than I had watching the old fleet. Meln remained in office. For a time, he gave speeches calling the observations incomplete, weaponized, destabilizing, scientifically irresponsible. Some people believed him. Most Imperial officials continued to repeat his language. But belief was no longer the only path available. That was the difference. Anyone with the equipment could check. Anyone without the equipment could send the coordinates to someone who had it. The Empire could keep telling its story. It simply could not prevent the universe from providing footnotes. Earth made no territorial demands. No subject world was asked to swear loyalty to humanity. No Imperial colony was offered annexation. The only demand transmitted to Meln before the fleet withdrew from Sol was short. Withdraw the surrender order. Leave Earth sovereign. He did. Months later, I accepted work at a small independent observatory outside Imperial space. Not human. I refused the first 2 human offers because I knew what everyone would say if I joined them immediately. The third offer was not from Earth. It came from a scientific cooperative whose members included former Imperial citizens, neutral researchers, and 3 species that distrusted humans almost as much as they distrusted Orvelans. It seemed appropriate. The observatory had no ceremonial entrance, no statues, no banners. Its primary telescope was smaller than the one I had used aboard the Imperial cruiser. The cafeteria food was terrible. I loved it. On my first day, I hung my smoked glass calibration disc beside the viewing port. The crack still ran from the rim almost to the center. Someone asked why I had not replaced it. I said because it still worked. That was not entirely true. Modern instruments did everything it could do and more. I kept it because the crack reminded me of the final observation, not of courage. Meln had been right about courage. Courage required understanding cost. What the disc reminded me of was simpler. Seeing clearly did not require remaining whole. The coordinate catalog grew. Humans published more lens opportunities. So did others. Some revealed atrocities. Some corrected accusations. One observation cleared the name of an Imperial commander, blamed for a massacre committed by a local faction. Fenwick insisted that result received the same prominence as Talvarin and Sareth. When I asked him why, he looked offended. Because it happened. Of course, years of Imperial training had prepared me to understand propaganda. It had not prepared me for people stubborn enough to prefer an inconvenient truth, even when convenience favored them. One evening, a new researcher arrived at the observatory. Young, nervous, not human, not Orvelin. She carried a tablet with one of the original Earth coordinates open on the screen. I was told you could help me align this. I looked at the designation. Talvarin, the first coordinate, the one Earth had sent instead of surrender. I pointed toward the main telescope. Use the automated system first. She nodded. Then she noticed the cracked disc hanging beside the port. "What's that?" "An old calibration tool." "Does it work?" "Sometimes." She smiled politely. "Can I use it?" I took the disc down and handed it to her. She held it carefully against the viewing port. Starlight entered through the smoked glass. The crack divided it. A thin, broken ring spread across the observatory floor. The researcher adjusted her stance. "What am I supposed to see?" I looked past her toward the stars. Once I would have answered with the history I had been taught. Later, I might have answered with the history humanity had uncovered. Now I understood why Fenwick had refused both roles. So I gave her the coordinate. I showed her the calibration. I stepped away from the telescope, and I said, "Look."